Your support is invaluable. A staggering 90% of our viewers have yet to join our community. We invite you to lend your support so we can continue crafting captivating content for you. We invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell. Share with us your location by dropping your city in the comments below. Once, I held the conviction that stability formed the very foundation of love. It's not the flowers nor the grand gestures, or the lengthy strolls along the shore, but rather the subtle, quiet moments that truly matter. Presence, commitment, reliability. Ethan, my husband, embodied each of those qualities. Calm and gentle in demeanor, a man who remained steadfast, even as life swirled around him. He toiled as an accountant, embodying meticulousness and reliability, a man upon whom all relied, for he never sought support from others. In those early years, I believed that was sufficient. Our abode, though modest in size, exuded charm and warmth, nestled within a tranquil community. Not quite a white picket fence, but nearly there. Ethan and I emerged not from privilege or heritage, but as two souls who found love and chose to create a life together. In my previous role within the marketing realm, I found myself quite adept at navigating its complexities. However, once we exchanged vows, I expressed my desire for a pause, perhaps a few months to recalibrate and contemplate the path ahead. He accepted it without question. He earned just enough to sustain us, and he took pleasure in being my supporter. He expressed that it filled him with pride. For some time, I held the conviction that I would returning to client meetings and campaign briefs. Yet, as the months slipped into years, I found myself embracing the cadence of serene mornings, invigorating gym sessions, and delightful lunches with friends. Ethan never exerted pressure. He continued to labor, to support, to embody the steady, reliable man I chose to marry. Yet, a transformation began to stir within me. First, it escaped my attention. It felt as though one had stirred from slumber in a chamber where the very walls had shifted in the night, imperceptibly, yet just enough to unsettle one's equilibrium. As I scrolled through my phone with increasing frequency, his words about his day faded into the background, barely registering in my mind. I began to frequent the gym more often, driven in part by a desire for mental clarity, and in part by the need to reclaim a piece of myself, something that existed independently of my role as a wife. And then came Jason. He was a trainer at the gym, exuding confidence and humor, always sporting a half-smile that suggested he held secrets untold. The type of man who engaged in eye contact as if it were a playful challenge. Initially, it was nothing more than playful exchanges, a light flirtation during breaks, a brief moment to aid my stretching routine. Yet, at some point, I began to perceive it as anything but innocuous. And I began to anticipate his presence. He began to send messages. I began to respond. Before long, our conversations transcended mere discussions of fitness plans. I never intended for it to unfold in that direction. Yet, in the absence of something vital, be it attention, passion, or the simple desire to be acknowledged, you may find yourself rationalizing choices you once deemed unthinkable. In that moment when our lips met, there was no room for guilt, only an overwhelming surge of heat. And when it intensified, when our closeness became undeniable, it felt as though something within me had come undone. An unfamiliar version of myself had seized control. I repeatedly reassured myself that it wouldn't endure, that it was merely a fleeting moment, a way out from a life that had begun to resemble a spreadsheet, orderly rows, aligned columns, yet devoid of any fire. Yet, Jason ignited a spark within me, making me feel significant. I found myself unwilling to part with that. Secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply they are concealed. With each lie I spun, each claim of outings with Cass and Mariah, or the extra hour spent at the gym, Ethan's awareness sharpened, his gaze growing more discerning. He kept it to himself. He never pointed fingers or elevated his tone. Instead, there were subtle inquiries, fleeting looks, and a silent disappointment that pierced more profoundly than any argument could. On a particular night, I recall we were nestled on the couch. The television flickered with the images of a documentary that barely held my attention, while I found myself texting Jason discreetly beneath a pillow. I believed I was being clever, yet Ethan looked at me with a gentle tone and asked, "You okay?" You've appeared somewhat distant in recent times. I offered him the smile, the one I had rehearsed, weary yet tender. A great deal weighs on my thoughts, I confided to him. Is there a topic that piques your interest? There was a moment of uncertainty. It wasn't a matter of desire. Rather, I understood that if I took that step, everything would come apart at the seams. Not every conversation has to delve into profound depths, I remarked. I am permitted to experience a day that isn't my best. He refrained from pushing. He merely nodded, his gaze returning to the flickering screen of the television. Yet I sensed the atmosphere change between us, as if we were perched on the edges of a vast chasm, separated by an unbridgeable distance. Then arrived the night that shattered all boundaries. Fresh from the shower, just after finishing my evening routine, I found him holding my phone, softly humming a tune that lingered in my mind. There he stood, right in the heart of the kitchen, clutching my phone as if it had suddenly grown fangs. He remained calm, refraining from raising his voice or hurling it aside. Instead, he simply lifted his gaze and asked, "Do you want to explain this?" I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. My eyes darted to the screen, where Jason's final message lingered, still open. "I eagerly anticipate the moment I can be with you again tomorrow, my love." That was a point of no return. Oh my goodness, Ethan. It's not as it appears. I spoke too quickly. He remained unperturbed, simply beginning to. He read the exchange in silence, his calm more piercing than anger, with a calm and methodical demeanor, reading each word as if it were crucial evidence in a courtroom. That night in the shower lingers in my thoughts. His message brought a smile I hadn't felt in a long time. My entire day. As I crafted each sentence, I sensed my barriers dissolving, leaving only the raw essence of truth behind. Unattractive, unrefined, and laid bare. "I want a divorce," I declared. In an instant. Neither tears nor pleas, just clarity, as if something had finally come into sharp focus. For quite some time now, I felt a deep sense of unhappiness, Ethan. I never intended to cause you pain, yet my heart found its way to Jason. I won't pretend otherwise. I am departing. He regarded me as though I were a stranger to him. I turned and made my way to the bedroom, the damp towels clinging to me, and said, "We need to discuss how to divide everything, the house, the savings. I desire 50%. A stillness lingered behind me, as if he were torn between believing my sincerity and questioning my sanity. "Would you like to have half?" At last he inquired. "I relinquished my career to champion yours," I remarked, slipping into leggings, as if we were merely discussing dinner arrangements. "I maintained the household's rhythm. I made sacrifices, Ethan. That holds significance." He remained silent, his gaze fixed on me, as if he were attempting to assess the price of the moment that had just transpired. "I never asked you to give anything up," he said, his voice measured and deliberate. "The respite was what you desired." "The facts remain unchanged," I asserted. "This was a collaborative effort, forged through our shared dedication." He nodded, as if he were still trying to grasp the moment, as if he were witnessing the woman he had married fade away before his eyes, uncertain whether to grieve or to unleash his fury. Yet, in that moment, he uttered a remark that utterly disoriented me. "Very well," he replied, "if a divorce is what you seek, so be it. I won't engage in a dispute over it." I blinked. "Are you for real? Do you believe that your happiness will increase with Jason? Proceed. I'm willing to share half of what I possess." In an instant, the balance of power transformed. I had anticipated raised voices, accusations, perhaps even a few tears. Yet Ethan remained unwavering, as if the chaos around him had left him untouched. For a brief moment, an unusual flicker of confusion washed over me, as if I couldn't quite decipher the angle he was taking. "Very well," I replied. "It's commendable to see you handling this with such maturity." He offered a faint smile. He echoed, "Mature." And I promise there's an undeniable charm in that smile. It lacked sorrow, it lacked bitterness. It was an understanding. He filled a glass with water, then declared, "We'll navigate this together. Mediation seems to be the most favorable path forward. More organized." With a nod of agreement, I reached for my phone, Eager to begin my search for attorneys, I had a particular individual in mind, a polished and self-assured woman from downtown, known for her formidable reputation. She had aided me in obtaining what was rightfully mine. What I failed to grasp, what eluded my understanding, was that Ethan had already engaged in this game, silently, long before I ever set foot in that gym, for the reason that Ethan chose not to maintain things under his name. As I delved deeper, I was on the brink of discovering the deceptive tranquility of a storm, each page revealing the absence that loomed larger than the words themselves. What about the house? Not under my banner. What about the investment accounts? Safeguarded by the family trust? What about the savings? It is, in essence, a segment of a managed portfolio that resides under my father's name. The car we frequented, the very one she adored for brunch outings and yoga sessions, was leased through my company and returned the week she departed. It was evident in her gaze. This was not the fortune she had envisioned. She blinked rapidly, returning to the start of the stack as if she had overlooked something important. "This can't be everything," she finally remarked, her gaze fixed not on me but on her lawyer. Her attorney adjusted his glasses, a furrow forming on his brow as he meticulously combed through the legal notations once more, this time with a deliberate slowness. "Seems to be accurate. Yet the house," she remarked, her voice lifting ever so slightly, "we reside there. That is our home." My lawyer communicated with a soft yet unmistakable clarity. "In fact, it is held by a private trust that existed long before your union. The deed is recorded in the name of Mr. Raines's father, and a transparent paper trail illustrates that the arrangement has remained consistent since the time of acquisition. It was never shared ownership." Sophie's attorney cast a glance between her and me. Did she play a role in the mortgage? I shook my head in disbelief. "It has remained settled for years. My father presented it to me when I received my promotion. Sophie never spent a dime." Her lips formed a narrow line. "Yet I reside there. I contributed to its maintenance. Surely that must hold some significance, wouldn't you agree?" Her voice trembled, not from feeling but from sheer incredulity, as if a promise had been made, only to reveal that the fine print was not in her favor. My lawyer leaned in, her voice steady and composed. "While contributions to a household hold undeniable value, it is important to recognize that without financial input or her name appearing on any legal documents, there exists no legal foundation for shared ownership." For an extended pause, silence enveloped the room. I refrained from gloating. I refrained from smiling. I remained seated, motionless, as I had been all along. Allow the quiet to express what language fails to convey. Sophie's attorney attempted to shift the focus, naturally. "What is the situation regarding alimony?" Sophie stepped away from her career to nurture the marriage. My attorney was prepared. No evidence exists to suggest that she was compelled or even asked to cease her work. Mr. Raines willingly supported her during her time away. Such circumstances do not create a basis for entitlement, particularly in the absence of children, health issues, or any formal support agreement. I noticed her flinch, subtle yet unmistakable, a mere twitch of her jaw. I recalled that evening, the way she had stood in our bedroom, declaring that she had sacrificed her career for my sake, how she had slipped into her leggings as if she were entitled to something for opting for leisure instead of toil. However, the reality is that one cannot exchange illusory sacrifices for tangible assets, especially when the numbers reveal the truth. As we concluded that initial meeting, her silence lingered, accompanying us all the way to the elevator. She left without uttering a single farewell. In the weeks that ensued, a transformation unfolded, not in an abrupt manner but rather like a gradual seepage from the hull of a vessel. At first, the descent goes unnoticed, but soon enough, the water envelopes your knees. I temporarily relocated from the house, taking up residence with my brother as the proceedings came to a close. I had no desire for the energy, the memories, the lingering echo of someone who once hummed in the shower while messaging another man. It took her approximately 3 weeks to come to the understanding that circumstances were not favoring her. The calls began then, gentle at the outset. "Hello. I thought I'd reach out to see how you've been faring lately." I remained silent, followed by the messages. I find myself lost in thought, pondering over everything over us, yet still no clarity emerges. A few days later, she decided to take a different path. Anger coursed through me, a tangled web of confusion enveloping my thoughts. I failed to manage it properly. Could we perhaps have a conversation just this once? I chose not to block her. I wished for her to persist in her efforts. For once, she found herself pursuing a phantom that had long since vanished. At long last, she arrived at my brother's residence. I returned home from work, and there she sat on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself as if the chill had finally seeped in. I remained on the steps, choosing not to sit beside her. "You're not answering," she murmured, her gaze averted from mine. "I understand," she murmured, her eyes rimmed with red. "A misstep has occurred." "Which one?" I inquired. "Engaging in an affair, concealing the truth for an extended period, or believing you can destroy a union and emerge with a portion of the remnants." She flinched as if the words struck with an unexpected force. "There is no need for cruelty. I am not," I stated plainly. "I am speaking truthfully. That is something you withheld from me when it truly counted." We lingered in quietude, a stillness that conveyed all that needed to be said. At last, the words escaped her lips. "I had hoped you would stand by my side." That brought me to a halt. Not due to the pain it caused, but rather because of the revelations it unveiled. "Did you expect me to plead?" "No, merely something." "Is there anything at all?" I gently shook my head. "Brittany, you vanished before I even realized there was a battle brewing. Your departure began long before the suitcase was ever zipped shut." She lifted her gaze, her eyes probing into mine. "I did not love him." I held the conviction, I remarked. "His presence ignited a warmth within you that was undeniable. A distinction exists." She parted her lips, only to seal them once more. "I didn't expect you to be so cold," she whispered. I gazed beyond her, toward the muted heavens as they surrendered to the encroaching twilight. "I am not feeling cold. I have reached my limit." After that, she vanished without a trace. At least not face to face. Yet, from time to time, a message would find its way to me. A recollection. A fleeting moment. A melody. Traces of a version of herself she believed I overlooked. Yet, her absence went unnoticed by me. I longed for the version of her I believed was real, and once I released that burden, I understood that I hadn't forfeited anything of true value. The divorce concluded with a whisper. The settlement lacked substance on her part. She retained her wardrobe, her personal funds, and a vehicle that I had already settled the payments for. That was the moment. No spousal support. There is no claim on my possessions. There is no dwelling. Without leverage, I embraced life at my own rhythm. Returned to the house once more. The walls have been repainted, acquired a canine companion, resumed my morning runs once more. It was peculiar how tranquility enveloped everything, how effortless everything seemed in the absence of the clamor. At times, individuals presume that resentment endures following an act of treachery. Each morning you rise with a smoldering resentment nestled deep within your chest. However, I am different. Each morning I rise with a heart full of gratitude, for I evaded a lifetime entwined with one who could cloak themselves in silence and deceit, who could practice her departure while feigning to grasp my hand. In that kind of hurt there exists a certain clarity. I chose not to respond in kind, no online post made, kept private matters under wraps. Victory is not achieved through the destruction of another. Victory lies in departing with your dignity preserved, allowing the truth to stand on its own merit. She yearned for a fresh start with someone who ignited her spirit, a figure adorned with ink and roughened palms, softly murmuring tender words in the hushed corners of locker rooms. Yet that existence, it lacks the durability for enduring use. The thrill diminishes gradually, with the focus, the semblance of liberation that ultimately transforms into remorse. What about me? I refused to dwell on the past. For peace does not plead for recognition, it simply resides in silence. And that is my current residence. In a silence that brings no pain, within a dwelling that has shed its spectral echoes, in a bed that has lost its sense of togetherness, In a life that finally feels like my own, that is the true conclusion. Not anger, not vengeance, only tranquility. In the aftermath of all that turmoil, the tranquility resonates more profoundly than any words she ever uttered. 1 year slipped by, the seasons transitioned quietly, lacking any grand fanfare. Only serene mornings, consistent patterns, and a fragment I hadn't realized was absent until I finally possessed it. It's amusing how the void left behind can turn into a blessing, especially when what you've lost isn't love, but merely a mirage. The words from Sophie gradually disappeared. It arrived on a serene Tuesday afternoon, a day that slips through the fingers of memory for many. It merely conveyed, "I hope this message finds you in good spirits." I chose not to respond, not from a place of anger. Yet, it was as if all words had been exhausted. She had transformed into a finished story, a tale that had ceased to exist in the now. After that moment, she vanished from my life, leaving no trace behind. Instead, life started to flourish in ways I had not anticipated. It began with the little details. Once more, I find myself in the kitchen, preparing meals for my own enjoyment, truly in the throes of culinary creation, not merely warming up whatever she used to request. I had lost track of how deeply I cherished the cadence of a kitchen, the soothing embrace of spices enveloping the atmosphere. I acquired some plants, not out of necessity, yet I yearned for a touch of green and vitality to breathe life back into my home. I encountered some familiar faces from the past. Those I hadn't recognized I had pulled away from due to the relentless maneuvering I once engaged in around her emotions, her timetable, her quietness. It felt as though I was piecing together fragments of my own identity once more. I found myself unable to mend from the wounds of heartbreak. I found myself reconnecting with the essence of who I once was, before I had to shrink to fill the void of another's desolation. Then a letter arrived. Not a text. This is not an email, a genuine letter. The message came from Rachel, Sophie's sister. Though we were never particularly close, she consistently maintained a polite demeanor. The note was succinct, crafted in elegant cursive script. She felt it was important for me to be aware that Sophie had ended things with the man she had chosen over me. It seems that events unfolded in a manner far from what was anticipated. Rachel penned that he was not the person she believed him to be. It seems she is discovering through difficult experiences that the pursuit of thrill does not necessarily equate to true joy. The words left me untouched as I read them. Lack of fulfillment. No sympathy. Only clarity. Sophie had constructed her universe around the allure of attention. She craved it as one craves breath. As the excitement faded with the new man, she surveyed her surroundings and realized she was amidst the remnants of a life she had believed she could effortlessly reconstruct. Yet, that is the essence of severing ties. One cannot always traverse back across those boundaries. I too did not reply to Rachel. It was not my role to intervene. The weight of Sophie's struggles no longer rested on my shoulders. Months later, I encountered someone quite unexpectedly, Emily. Our paths crossed many years ago, well before Sophie entered the picture. In those days, the timing was all askew. In a distinct realm of thought, I pursued my aspirations, crafting a professional journey. She had shown kindness and stability, yet I allowed her to fade away as I pursued my own transformation. She sat in solitude at a coffee shop, engrossed in her reading. She glanced up as I entered, her smile as warm and familiar as if no time had elapsed whatsoever. Greetings, unfamiliar soul. We conversed for hours, steering clear of the past. Simply existence. Authentic material. Literature. Melody. Sunday mornings possess a tranquility that often goes unappreciated. She remained silent on the subject of Sophie, and I chose not to mention it either. I discovered that she had launched her own venture, a charming boutique nestled in the heart of downtown. She adored it. One could observe the spark in her eyes as she spoke, illuminating her passion. We traded our numbers. Not in that uncomfortable, perhaps I shall, perhaps I shan't manner. Seemed effortless. Simple. We began to spend time together, gently. Take your time. No statements made, only authentic connection. With Emily, every moment seemed deliberate. Dialogues carried significance, transcending mere sound. Amidst the laughter, a silence lingered, rich and full, not devoid of meaning. She never inquired about my experiences. She allowed me to present it in fragments whenever I felt prepared, and when I revealed it, she offered no judgment. She merely absorbed the words. That's a revelation I hadn't recognized I was deprived of, a person who hears without the compulsion to reply. As twilight descended upon us, we lingered on my back porch, the world around us fading into shadows, and I found myself sharing my deepest truths with her. Not from a place of suffering, but rather from a desire for her understanding. She offered a soft nod once I had finished. Then she remarked, "You didn't deserve that. Yet perhaps it has brought you to this very moment." Perhaps it truly did. At times, the most excruciating passages are those that unveil the gateways we never realized we required. Our paths never crossed again after that, though I learned she had relocated to another state, a new beginning perhaps. I hold no resentment toward her. I wish for her to discover whatever it is that has been eluding her grasp. But what about me? I ceased the pursuit of anything. I began to make my selections, opting for those who reciprocate my choices, opting for experiences rather than recollections, opting for tranquility instead of chaos. Revenge was not a necessity for me. The world need not be privy to her actions. I simply had to recall my true self before allowing another's selfishness to redefine my value. These days, I find myself rising in the stillness of the morning, enveloped in the comfort of a cozy bed, and embracing a self that fills me with pride. The true triumph lies there. Not letting go but progressing ahead. It's not about discovering a new face, but rather uncovering a genuine connection. Ultimately, I have come to understand that the individual I have transformed into in the wake of it all is not only stronger and softer, but also far more complete than the man who once confused loyalty with love. On a tranquil evening, as the sun sank beneath the horizon and the final rays of light danced through the window, I gazed across the room at Emily, her head gently resting on my shoulder, the echoes of laughter still hanging in the air from a moment that was both simple and delightful. In that instant, clarity washed over me. The past had finally released its grip on my soul. I emerged from the heartbreak, not merely intact. I have moved beyond it. What actions would you have taken if you found yourself in my position? Is it truly feasible to find forgiveness in the wake of such a profound betrayal? I invite you to share your reflections in the comments section below. If you found pleasure in the tale, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for a fresh dose of emotional and suspenseful narratives each week.